Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Paul. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. We're gonna start things out with a thank you to our artist Lindsay, as we got some updated artwork for the podcast.
Yep, we did. Yeah, she was very kind to offer to help us dust some things off.
And also it's good because it's a standby message, and we are taking a hiatus for the next week. So our next podcast recording will be on April 12th.
Yep. So our hiatus coincides with at least Batwoman and even Black Lightning is I think also returns the 11th and 12th respectively. So
nice. We planned that.
We did
it completely. No, that's good. And I mean, at this rate, we're gonna have 2 episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier to cover, and they'll probably be really dense considering at the speed that show is going through their storylines.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we do have some headlines. Star Wars news. Haven't talked them in a while.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi show starts production next month, and they have added 10 cast members, including Joel Edgerton, who's returning as Uncle Owen, and Hayden Christensen as Anakin and Darth Vader, and Kumail Nanjiani.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That man suddenly is popping up in all of these franchises.
He really is, because I know obviously we'll see him later in this year, hopefully in the Eternals.
Mm-hmm.
And he's everywhere. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he must have had a really good business dinner with some Disney exec and he's just like, I want to be in all of your top franchises. Make it happen.
Exactly. It's a good place to be. I mean, heck, even like, with the news of Star Wars, yeah, it's exciting that with the Obi-Wan project, because it's been something that, prior to Solo, that they probably would have made this a feature film, but and of course now it is going to be on Disney Plus, and we got. We did get the news about Hayden Christensen during the Disney investor meeting, but the other cast, they dropped like 8 other or 9 other people today, and of course the series, I guess, is going to be set 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, so we'll have a lot of Tatooine action here, given especially that Edgerton is going to be playing Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru's going to be in it, and a host of other, I'm sure, familiar faces and names, probably, given the way that Mandalorian has really carried forward some of the characters from like the Clone Wars and other things. So I'm sure they'll probably do that in this series as well.
Yeah. I know that it got announced this week that Comic-Con is setting their big return for Thanksgiving weekend. Mm-hmm. Fascinating concept, might I add.
Yeah, it is. I like theorized with someone. I was like, well, maybe they figured this is an easy way to maybe to foster some social distancing, since a lot of people will be with their families, and only the true diehards will be the ones that'll show up. But from what I gather, there's still more details to be worked out. But I'm sure they'll still have some reasonable limits and stuff.
I just feel bad for the celebrities who have to end up making guest appearances during that weekend.
Yeah. So, it'll be interesting to see. I joked on the rundown how it's good that they're going to be doing it in person, because I actually completely forgot that WonderCon was this past weekend, which is a sister event that's run by the Comic-Con International.
Oh, well, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be able to figure out something that'll top fandom. Yeah. Like the initial day of fandom, which was just a brilliant concept and executed very well. And I still remember that and just being surprised. But my point was that around Comic-Con weekend, there's always this battle of like, okay, who won Comic-Con, DC or Disney? And I feel like at this point, ever since Snyder's cut drop, it's been DC's like, oh, we've released the highly anticipated movie. I'm not going to say sequel. Remake, whatever you want to call it.
The official cut.
The official cut. And so we're going to keep ourselves in the headlines by reminding you that there's more to come, and we are still in the business of making movies. To parallel just Disney finding this wave of constantly being in the pop culture zeitgeist with their shows that they're dropping. Yeah. I mean, you had a good year, DC, to come up with these shows too.
Yeah, you did. And well, and I think with HBO Max and the Snyder Cut, I mean, I think it did do what it was supposed to do. I think really, even though at the end of the day, I know at first it still didn't do quite as well as Wonder Woman 84 did as far as I think initial numbers. But I think, and maybe it's just because you and I are just in the bubble of people who talk about this stuff and we monitor these things versus, other folks. Because I was talking to some folks over the weekend and I was like, what do you think about the Snyder Cut and blah, blah. And they were like, the what? But I think in the fandom and in the and people who really get into this stuff, I think it definitely will draw people to HBO Max to give DC, because DC is developing shows and content for that platform, and so so I think we will get that. And of course, speaking of DC, we also we had quite a bit of 3 things as far as upcoming projects over the last few days.
Yeah. So they managed to hear me, and they replaced Billy Crudup with Ron Livingston in the Flash movie. My only problem is Ron Livingston, for some reason, he always comes off very awkward to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I'm a fan of A Million Little Things, and he's the dead character. So it's very jarring for me to be like,
well, for me, it's like for Ron Livingston, I always obviously go to Office Space and also Swingers.
Not bad company.
Yeah.
The movie that I still don't really understand if it is being made or if it's still in pre-production. Black Adam has announced a release date of July 29th, 2022. Now, if we've learned anything about release dates, they are flexible.
Yeah, they're very flexible. But at least we actually have a date. We have something to look.
We have a temporary date that has been announced. Who knows if it'll get pushed back? And then Pierce Brosnan has joined the cast as Dr. Fate.
Yep.
And so the movie, as Will likes to explain to me and remind me every day, is getting made despite my belief that it's not.
Yeah, it's finally happening. I think for me, when I was pretty excited about Pierce Brosnan being cast as Dr. Fate. I mean, basically, he's the JSA character, and he's sort of like he's the Doctor Strange of the DC universe, being the special Wizard Supreme type character. So, he definitely, of course, he had a pretty pivotal role in the Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comic book in the Silver Age as well. So I'm pretty excited about that, and especially given Black Adam is kind of looks like he's going to be more of an anti-hero in this story anyway. So I'm getting excited about this film since it actually may be getting made now.
A movie that we do know has been made, and they are coming out with the trailers. Granted, we have been fooled in the past. Well, I don't think you and I were, because we never actually saw the original.
Right.
But Suicide Squad has dropped their second trailer, and we should just rename it now to John Cena and Idris Elba Comedy Hour. I mean, they are the buddy cop DC. Like, that's what they're selling us on. Surprisingly, it's not like the original one where they just went all in on Harley Quinn, and I mean, she does appear in this, of course, but at the same time, I was not expecting the comedic chemistry between Idris and John Cena.
I wasn't expecting that either. I really wasn't, and I just, I mean, whenever they were, when they were on the bus and they're like, you got the toilet on your head.
Yep.
And Cena is like, if when they're walking through the jungle and the whole dick line, as far as like, if you lay out, if serving my country, I'll eat all these dicks. And I was just roll. When I first saw the trailer, I was just rolling on the floor. And of course, I got the glimpse of Polka Dot Man. And whenever we saw the trailer during DC Fandom, that was one person that would definitely really latch to it early on. So and of course King Shark. I know you haven't watched the Harley Quinn show that was on DC Universe, and now it's on HBO Max. But check it out sometime, because you'll appreciate King Shark more, I think, when you watch this film, especially given that they're kind of playing on the same kind of themes. It seems that the character was like in that cartoon.
You're not the only one to say that. I've heard that in a lot of reviews about the Harley Quinn and show, as well as anticipation for seeing King Shark on the big screen.
Yeah.
So, well, whatever screen you're watching movies on these days.
Yeah, true.
So,
yeah.
But I just, for some reason, I keep forgetting.
Well, it's on HBO Max now.
At one point, I told myself, I'm going to watch Harley Quinn. And you know what? Zack Snyder dropped a 4-hour saga that I was supposed to watch. Sorry. I think I overdosed on DC last weekend. And considering how I'm still listening to podcasts cover that saga, I'm still overdosing.
So, you just confirming what we all know, Sarah. You secretly love this film, but you'll never admit it.
I'm just a sucker for reactions to things. I always find how people respond to different things, especially if I've seen it. And so I've already formed my own opinion, but I see how others, because they also make me smarter. So
true.
Each their own. Moving on from one DC buddy cop drama, action, whatever you want to call it. We're currently just starting the MCU buddy cop drama with Falcon and Winter Soldier. And see, last weekend, I don't think I mentioned this. The only thing that was missing was actually the chemistry between Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, because we didn't get them together on screen. I don't think a single moment in that first episode.
We didn't.
So the fact that within 5 minutes we got them, and it was just beautiful. This was everybody. As soon as you saw Civil War, it was like, okay, when are we going to get the buddy cop movie between these two? They're great.
Yep.
And we finally got it. And I like how the first episode we went very in depth last week and had a lot of character independent structuring of these characters and of their independent journeys. This episode is like peanut butter jelly time. Yeah. And this is what we wanted. It was like a magic trick where they made us forget what we wanted, and then they gave us what we wanted, and we're like, that right.
Yep. Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. But I'm glad they structured it this way.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because speaking of hearing other commentary and stuff, I know I've seen some commentary out there about some folks were like, maybe they should have just gone straight to episode 2 and not have episode 1. But you really need episode 1 to, as you noted, to really set them up as far as these individuals, because again, with these Disney Plus shows,
Mm-hmm.
we are, this is really the opportunity to flesh out the phase 2 and 3 characters.
Yep.
That I mean, obviously Bucky was a phase 1, but even then, I mean, we really didn't really learn. He was a back supporting character in First Avenger. His real story really was when we saw him as Winter Soldier.
Right, and you're not allowed to call him Bucky, by the way.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. That's right. I'm not Steve. That's right. I'm not Steve.
You just haven't known him long enough.
Right? I haven't known him long enough to call him Bucky, even though he's only been around only 106 years. But but yeah.
No, wait. You're so right, and us viewers never learn our lessons, because we had the same discussion about WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
First few episodes really slow. I remember somebody distinctly hating it, but we won't talk about that too much.
Okay.
But looking back, you're not going to have the emotional payoff,
right,
without living in that world. And also not the emotional, but like the dramatic irony. In this episode specifically, if we were not to have the first episode, the couples therapy session.
Oh gosh, yeah.
and I'm going to hold off on talking about the lovely comedy and just talk about the emotional beats. Mm-hmm. When it comes back to the Shield and what happened and the choices that these two characters made, mm-hmm. and how Sam stands by his decision to give up the Shield. And we understand that from the first episode about why he did.
Yeah.
We also understand from Bucky's perspective, especially after he delivers the line, that by you giving that up, it makes me think that Steve has been wrong about me, because he's still in that PTSD Hydra mind where he's not sure he's even worthy probably of being an Avenger or considered Avenger because of everything that he's done wrong, mm-hmm. for a majority of his lifetime. And the one person who knew him before that has been taken away from him. So now to have the Shield also in a way taken away from him is kind of, or given away like that, makes him continue down this cycle of self-destruction. I don't think we would have that.
No, you're right.
Without the first episode.
You're so right, and I'm glad you talked about the emotional beats in that scene, because it really having Buck when Barnes says, "Hey," questions himself, questions Steve, and basically his self-worth, and I guess the constant self-doubt, as you noted, that he has about this, and the pairing that Sam has with Steve and their relationship, and then also really getting into, whenever Sam talked about the Shield that feels like it belongs to someone else,
mm-hmm.
and really get into, I don't know if it's like imposter syndrome that Sam was feeling.
Yeah.
But also it was also, and this episode really doubles down on how America treats its heroes.
Yes.
And really shows a mirror as far as Bucky only sees, he sees Sam as Sam. He doesn't, I don't know if he just sees the relationship there with, as you said, with the Shield and with Steve, and that's the universe he's looking at. Sam is looking at it in a whole nother level. And then I think Bucky realizes that racial component whenever he takes him to see Isaiah.
Yeah. Yep.
Bradley, and I think he picks up on that concept, but I think that's part of what Sam is feeling as far as why he doesn't fully feel like the shield is his, and it feels like he's at war with himself, because he is dealing with he's dealing with in the first episode, again, why it was so important to have that episode and the individual stories when he was at the bank and trying to get a loan and thinking that, hey, I'm an Avenger, and then he gets treated the way that he does and then the guy has the gall to ask him for like a selfie after he treats him that way. And then of course whenever they do go to Baltimore and we see the little kid say, hey, it's Black Falcon.
Right.
And he's like, no, it's just Falcon. No, my dad says you're Black Falcon. No, it's just Falcon. And when I was watching the episode, it reminded me of a conversation you and I had offline from whenever we were doing show prep or something, and how it's always like woman director or and or black this, fill in the blank. And I just love the way Sam dealt with that with the kid. Is just like, no, I am just Falcon. You don't need to qualify it with this with black on it. And it's I'm so glad they brought that into this show, and and it really does show, getting out of universe for a little bit, but it's with just when you have diversity and different perspectives of people telling the story. And I think that's also came across in Black Panther with Ryan Coogler. And now with Malcolm Spellman, who's a black showrunner and has a a diverse writers room, you're seeing those kind of things sprinkled into these stories. And I couldn't also help but think about Watchmen too, with how Lou Gossett Jr.'s character, how he also had to hide himself as far as not showing who he really was. And I saw that with Isaiah Bradley. And how America, if they knew that the actual first Captain America actually wasn't Steve Rogers, but was Isaiah Bradley. At least in the comic book, that was the case. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they made it that clear in the MCU, but how things would have been different, and again how we treat our heroes differently, and then of course they lock him away for. Not clear what the reason is in the MCU, at least in the comic. It was because he allegedly stole Cap's uniform. But I just really thought, getting to our conversation as we started off about why the first episode was so important to set these two characters up and getting it to that couples therapy session where the motivations for, Bucky wanting to, where his self validation is tied into that shield, and Sam's is tied in something else, not necessarily the shield, but he's not sure. We at this point are not sure what it is.
Well, it's all about identity.
Yeah.
And what I really liked about this episode is to add a character who we all knew was coming, John Walker. Mm-hmm. We all kind of knew he was going to be presented as the new Cap. He also has a bit of a imposter syndrome going on.
Yeah.
He also is an army vet, or someone who probably is more present day, and this character, he's been a captain before. It shouldn't be so different than now. I still think it's kind of weird, though, how they chose somebody without any powers. I don't understand that at all. Not to say that Sam does have powers, but he had a Red Wing.
Mm-hmm.
Always wanted to do that.
Sorry, Rich. Sorry, I'm so sorry about Red Wing. Even though Bucky was he's like, damn it, I missed my chance.
But I also just liked the very subtle introduction of John Walker in that room, the anxiety, the suit. I also, I don't know what it was, but they did another magic trip where I got so engaged with just seeing Bucky and Sam being buddy cop, doing their Avenger thing, and then kind of getting their butts kicked.
Yep.
Only for John to show up, and I'm like, whoa, oh yeah. Oh, okay. I just, if anyone can bring these two together, it'll always be Cap.
Yep.
John Walker has a different approach to bringing them together, but the enemy is my enemy. So I think you're spot on with this whole idea of how all of these three characters are all suffering from their own identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having very different reactions to the shield and who has the shield and the choices being made about the mantle and more importantly, Steve Rogers' legacy.
Yeah.
And then to add on a layer of complexity because the MCU doesn't like anything simple.
No.
They introduce Isaiah Bradley and they talk about a different angle on that legacy that we haven't seen before, which brings me to my next point. We were talking about WandaVision and all of the retcon that they ended up doing towards the end. They're doing that with this show too.
Yeah.
They're doing it very slowly. I mean, we got a lot of retcon at the end of WandaVision, but again, just when you think you understand these characters because you've seen them in probably 5-6 movies, doesn't mean you've really sat down and explored all of the nuances. And I think that's what's so fascinating about these MCU shows is that they're able to take these characters and really expand upon their characters and the MCU as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And they really touch on the original sin of the MCU as far as, with the racism and how, as I mentioned before, how we treat our heroes. And the other thing that really was something that the moment the episode started out for me was seeing when John Walker was introduced at his hometown stadium on Good Morning America and watching the drum line.
Yeah.
And of course they were playing Star Spangled Man, of course, which, again, the parallels between Steve and John Walker, but instead of it being the, War Bonds USO type show with Steve at World War II, now we have a predominantly black marching band, and then fast forward, and it really drove home the point whenever we were introduced to Isaiah Bradley later in the episode, and just the real juxtaposition of the two, how these individuals are being treated. I mean, yes, John Walker, he's had 3 Medal of Honors, and he figured out how to do the. I thought another little funny aside was whenever he and Bucky were having a back and forth about throwing yourself on a grenade. So
yeah.
He's almost it's one of those things where this guy is like too. They're setting him up to be like too perfect.
Well, I don't view him as perfect though. I found performance that Russell Wyatt is giving to be very, very stiff, just like Steve was originally. Steve is always viewed as a very stiff character who always has an explanation for things and always does the right thing. And I think there's a few cracks where it's kind of just like, okay, you're an imposter. Just admit it. You are not Steve Rogers. You never will be Steve Rogers. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you here?
Yeah. Well, when I say too perfect, I mean as far as just like the polished image. But then you are right. I mean we do see those cracks and one of the arrogance of Walker, especially as far as how he treats Sam and Bucky whenever he and Battlestar rescues them. also, but later in the episode too, when he bails Bucky out, when Bucky misses his court-appointed session to basically go to Munich to help Sam. So so it's one of those things we already see, like, to your point, the imposter syndrome, and him trying to, and also everyone trying to live up to the legacy of Steve Rogers. But I think we will, as things progress. I don't know if he will. He'll eventually become a U.S. agent like he did in the comics, I'm sure. Obviously, the MCU always takes their own little spin on things because, of course, whenever this character was first introduced, he was like super patriot. So he was introduced to because Steve wasn't seen as patriotic enough and stuff, and that's why they introduced this character in the comics. So, it'll be. I think they will take that kind of path with Walker and Sam in this series, where Sam grows into realizing that this Walker dude he is the antithesis of Steve, and if we want to carry Steve's legacy on properly, I've got to take up the shield. Yeah,
and I mean, he should be given the shield because he knows what the difference between a sorcerer and a wizard is.
And we're all in. What are we fighting this week? An android, an alien, or a sorcerer?
Yeah. And shout out. I mean, I feel like sometimes people really are listening to our podcast because they even name dropped White Wolf.
Yeah.
And they alluded to a story of why Bucky is not in Wakanda. Okay. There's a story there. There was some times that we missed out on.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, while they're doing all of this, these writers are still like, oh, don't get too distracted because we have a whole Flag Smasher, not a cool name. But did we tell you that these are all super soldiers? No. Okay, well, they are. And did we tell you that they have a really ambiguous motivation? Because there was a line in the first episode where they talked about some people think that the world was better during the blip.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you think that? Oh, well, I mean, half of the population got blipped out.
Yeah.
And it got removed, and suddenly there's enough resources. And so now these Flag Smashers are stealing resources to give back to those who are in need of it, because now that all of these people are back, we're still without enough resources to support that population. And I like that, and I like how they set it up at the end of the episode that this group is also being chased by someone.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the person who they stole the super soldier serum from.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, that is the United States government.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we know the government can always be trusted with secrets, and they never turn around and say "Hail Hydra." Nope.
No.
Never have happened. Never's been infiltrated. Which, speaking about Hydra, the tease of Zemo. So beautiful.
It was.
Oh. Perfect ending to an episode of just like, we're just getting started. We are just getting started. No, I'm having a great time with this show so far. It constantly surpasses my expectations.
Yeah, I agree. Same here. I mean, I know it right out of the gate. I really have just been on board. I mean, I think it has the right amount. I think it's the right mixture of character development, right mix of action. We're not, unlike WandaVision, where everybody was just getting so wrapped around the axle and theory spiraling about what's this mean and what that mean and what's to come and blah blah blah. I think this time around, folks are just sort of letting the story just roll out and riding with it, and just going for the ride that they're taking us on. And I think, and at the end of the day, just like with, I think with this one, people hopefully will even be more satisfied with the finale. Whereas I know some folks, at least with WandaVision, some people, yeah, I like the finale, but you know, you know, some folks didn't feel like it completely stuck the landing. Whereas this one, I think actually might.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm not going to jinx them. I don't know what's going to happen. It's only 2 episodes, but so far they are really making good choices. So I'm looking forward to watching whatever happens.
Yeah.
Now going back to DC and Batwoman, it's very surprising. I actually feel like I finally got a solid Batwoman episode.
Yeah.
I mean, the Alice stuff very forgettable, but the freaking Black Mask stuff. Okay. The scene where they're on the conveyor belt or whatever, and Ryan's looking over at this other guy, and I'm just like, whoa, what is happening here? This looks like something out of the 60s. Like, this is really disturbing. And then they said, no, it's not like the 60s, because this show is about to become a bit PG-13, borderline raw, because we're gonna saw this man in half, and you're gonna see the blood. And I'm like, okay, so Batwoman is not for children. Got it, Roger.
Yeah.
As long as Black Mask is around, not a villain that you want your kids watching on TV.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What about you? What are your overall thoughts on this week's episode of Batwoman?
Yeah, so I didn't want to spoil it for you, but I did send you a message out this morning. I was like, yeah, our faith in the writers was definitely they rewarded our faith, because you're right. This is the first episode in many weeks where, whenever we first started talking about this season, where I felt like I was like, oh yeah, I can't wait to talk with you about this episode tonight, because you're right. It served the purpose of a solid mid-season finale. Yeah. And for one, like you said, I mean, we've heard the name Black Mask being dropped throughout the show, and in particular this season. But when they introduce him, and as you said, very graphically introduce him to this show, it's just like, okay, all right, Alice, yeah, you're a badass. We're gonna badass you +1, because he and the motivations that he has in wanting to kill Batwoman are very, very clear. And it's not wrapped up in the Canes, Crows, all that drama. So it's just pure, just like harm. It was we didn't save my daughter kind of deal, and now I'm literally going to saw you in half. So, and then also utilizing Angelique. That was another thing too. Whenever with the False Face Society, once you're in, I mean, basically, once you're in, you're in. There's only one way out, and the way he when he captured Angelique and basically laid out the terms for her exit as a way to get her to not confess to what actually happened when the police commissioner was killed, was assassinated. That was another chilling moment where I was just like, this dude's not playing. Right.
I mean, they really took the gang element, which this isn't the first gang we've seen play on the show, because Alice was Alice and the Wonderland gang.
Right.
So I found it interesting how they're like Black Mask and the Faceless game, and I'm like, okay, how many games are there in this city, and why do they come just when another one has been removed? But whatever.
Yeah, and they all have the initials FFS. I'm like, that's pretty. That was a nice play on word on that initials there.
I think I think why Black Mask works so well in this episode is because they really made it a point to we've seen throughout these last few episodes with Ryan, we've seen how she really despises the crows with good reason.
Yeah.
And in this episode, we were not only that was not only pushed forward, but the GCPD, like, which is a reminder, yeah, this city still has its own police department that is corrupt, filled with a bunch of racism, a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have Black Mask, who, yes, is sadistic, horrible guy, scum of the earth. But he's also looking at Batwoman, GCPD, crows, and like, you're all the same too. Yep. Aren't we all doing the same here? I mean, Batwoman, you and I are both doing the same thing. We're wearing a mask. We are trying to protect those that the crows and the GCPD are unable to protect or unable to want to do. Like, there is no justice in this city.
Yeah, yeah. And it was,
I thought was so brilliant to do. And we did talk about this before, how the issue is Alice is not Ryan's villain.
Right.
And they made it very good. They did a very good job in this episode to say, no, Black Mask is the villain.
Yeah.
And I like it. I like the twists and turns with Angelique. I'm glad she's in jail because I was a bit tired. I called it from the get-go. Okay, Jordan, you're not the first one to start shipping these two. I think this is the first time that we've ever seen them on camera. This is going to happen, Will. I don't know if it's going to happen quickly, but when Sophie said not even enemies to lovers, maybe, Sophie in denial, the writers are going to push this. They're going to push it really for next season.
yeah, they are. They are. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I really don't. I mean, but I will say with Sophie, I feel that from where the character started this season to where she is now, I feel like we've got a lot of growth in that character, and it's no longer pining about Ryan, not Ryan, but Kate, and
well, she's also out now.
Yeah.
That was a big part of her whole thing last season. It was she was the one in the closet. She was, so they're not focused on that part of Sophie. They're focused on Sophie being in denial about her job.
Yeah, and I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think that's really good growth with that, and of course having her sister be a Black Lives Matter activist. And really shows that tension. And when they were there in the garage, whenever she was getting chased by the Black Mask false face gang because she witnessed what actually did happen, and and they were like forced not only to help each other out because of sisters, obviously, but also to for that one moment, Jordan's like, well, shit. If I'm gonna live, I gotta trust a crow, even if and this who just happens to be my sister. So, making these strange bedfellows, to deal with the overarching enemy that is Black Mask, that's going to be the focal point for the rest of the season. Really does it really drives into some of those story points that they set the groundwork early on this season between Sophie and Ryan, and their prior relationship, as far as Ryan taking the fall for Angelique, and Ryan obviously having distrust of police and the crows and all, and so so I'm glad they're carrying those things forward and dealing with these issues in a way that, yes, it is sometimes on the nose, but but it's actually serving the larger story too. So it's a good way that the writers are integrating those types of real life issues into the show.
There was a lot more nuance and subtlety, and more about differences of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot of what we saw in the first season, and I don't think we've seen too much of in this episode, because all of the storylines were interwoven in a way where you were surprised when it did approach a certain public topic or whatever political topic. And again, the MVP of the episode is a classic Mary moment where Mary out of nowhere, and I think this has been a problem I've had with Ryan for a while, is where Ryan's constantly the one, almost in a judgment way, of telling Luke and Mary, like, the choices they've made, especially in relation to Alice, have been wrong, and here's why, and that's not, we're supposed to stand for something else. But in this episode, Mary comes out of nowhere and it's just like, no. You see what you're doing. This is what we call hypocrisy. You're doing exactly what Kate did with Alice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that moment. Yep.
I was like, oh no, she didn't.
Yeah, yep. I was like, that was the moment I fell in love with Mary.
Take a shot for every time Will says that when we're talking about Batwoman.
Yep. I mean, I'm like Mary, but I really, that was like, okay, this is yeah. I mean, you're right. I'm glad you brought that moment up, because that was, to me, one of the standout moments of the episode.
And I think it allowed Ryan to suddenly realize a very similar moment to Iris this week in watching The Flash, where Iris writes a story and then Allegra tells her, you're totally in the wrong here. You are the story and you have to embrace that. And it's like, Batwoman is a symbol and there's been a code for a reason, but at the end of the day, you're human. Mm-hmm. So your relationships and your entanglements, it's always going to cloud your judgment. Like, yeah, that's Alice, but she's still a daughter of someone, a sister to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Angelique has been with you through your ups and downs, got you through the orphanage and all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, she's working for some really shady people, and she needs to, in order to help us get justice for this city, she needs to own up to what her involvement and do the right thing. And so I love how that all played out. I think we're finally, thank the Lord, over this whole Ryan and Luke being bothered by each other because of Kate.
Yeah.
Now here's my question, Will.
Yeah.
Is the quote unquote new Kate Kane gonna be Black Mask's daughter?
No. So the new Kate Kane, it will be it. So what they're going to do, it looks like, in a way that they, because my big concern last week when we first got the news about Wallace coming on the show was how would they integrate this recasting into the story. So it looks like with this new with Enigma, because that's another character that has been name dropped several times this season, and so we finally did at the end of the episode see learn who Enigma was, and we also, I think I'm not sure if what was going on with Julia Pennyworth when she was talking with the guy on the phone, whether or not Enigma was a result, did something to Julia or not. But she's going, but we getting back to Alice for just a moment. I remember Alice and Ocean were, their minds were washed of their memories by Enigma. And so basically Black Mask is going to be doing this. They did find the actual Kate, and so they're going to use, obviously do whatever mind thing it is that's going to reintroduce Kate back into the story, physically into the story, I should say, and whatever nefarious things that they're going to have her do, as far as carrying out whatever evil ends that Black Mask's ultimate goal is to mess with Gotham and the Crows and everyone else.
Yeah.
So and then of course they'll because they said the headline whenever we were in is an altered Kate Kane. So not only is she going to be physically altered, but also mentally things are going to be adjusted as well by Enigma.
Right. Yeah, I like the foreshadowing that occurred at the beginning of the episode, because they made a point of saying, may her memory bring you peace.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the memory is actually going to be causing a lot of haunting. Just like how we saw memory, knowing people before an event, like a kidnapping or a death of a family member, and knowing them after, you're almost knowing two different people.
Yeah.
So, so I think that'll, like you said, kind of skeptical, a bit nervous, especially how the first bunch of episodes have played out. But like you said at the very beginning, always have faith in these writers, because they can turn it around real quickly.
Yeah.
And and also dig themselves a hole.
Yeah, they can also dig a hole. But we given that we are left with the typical CW Arrowverse cliffhanger, we got a good one as far as the mid-season finale. So I think it was a very strong episode to end, for them to go on a hiatus, and I'm back on the train of looking forward to the show each week, because I know for the last couple weeks it was kind of a drag, but my faith has been restored.
All right, Will, that's it for us tonight. Tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me at WillMPolk, WILLMPOLK on Twitter.
And you can find me on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Find us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.